Hello everyone. Today's video is on bedwetting. I hope this is helpful because I get asked about this all the time. I want you guys to understand there's a huge distinction in your pediatrician's mind between continued bedwetting that's just never gone away from before the child was potty trained and all of a sudden occurrence of bedwetting when the child never bedwet before. They're two very different things. If you have a child who was dry at night for years and then is wetting the bed, something is wrong. It could be as simple as constipation. Well, that's not so simple, but it could be constipation. It could be stress or anxiety, abuse. It could be a urinary tract infection. It could even be diabetes. If they're drinking excessively and wetting excessively, they'll often start to wet the bed. So new onset of bedwetting definitely deserves an office visit, okay? Now, the opposite is true if you have a child who has just never been able to potty train for overnight. I want to reassure you, if that child is able to completely stay dry all day long, just not at night, everything's working. Their bladder works, their kidneys work. They understand when their bladder's full, their brain tells their body to go to the restroom, they use the restroom, it's all good. Everything's hooked up properly. I don't want you to worry that something's wrong with their urinary tract. In fact, usually what's happening for prolonged bedwetters, well, for one thing, they probably have a family history, but they're also usually extremely deep sleepers. So the bladder is hooked up properly to everything. The bladder sends the normal signal to the brain. The brain is just such a deep sleeper, it doesn't hear the signal, so it doesn't wake the child up to go to the restroom and empty their bladder, so they wet the bed. It is extremely common, and so our only concern with children is that they could have some self-esteem problems or feel bad about themselves because they're still bedwetters, and they're often extremely embarrassed by it. Remind that child there's nothing wrong with them. It's very common, and probably somebody in the family did the very same thing. The way this works statistically over time is, say for example, around age 5, maybe, I couldn't say specifically, it seems like it was around 10 to 20% of children still bedwet at age 5, and then gradually each year that number continues to go down. Now remember, it never completely goes away. 1% of the adult population still struggles with bedwetting, so there are still adults out there that bedwet. So that can be a reassurance to your child as well. Never shame your child. This is not a behavioral problem. This is not done on purpose. Children are mortified by this. They would never do this on purpose because they find it very embarrassing. So don't embarrass them. Maintain their self-esteem. If they're to the age now that they want to start doing sleepovers, 7 or 8 or 9 years old or whatever it may be for your family with, of course, someone you trust very much, make sure that the family where they'll spend the night know about this problem and can handle it in a discreet manner. I mean, at least these days, thank goodness, we have some fantastic nighttime pull-ups that can help the whole process be smoother and less embarrassing and easier to keep discreet. Now, let's say your child is getting older. Maybe they're 9, maybe they're 10, and they're really embarrassed and want to try to do something about this. There are a couple of options. Most of the time, we just encourage you to continue to wait it out, and the percentage goes down each year, and they'll eventually outgrow it on their own. But other options are, there is a medicine called DDAVP, which is a synthetic antidiuretic hormone that can be taken as a pill at bedtime. And all it does is help the child's body produce less urine just overnight. So it's safe to do this. It's not 100% guarantee, though, because they could still make enough urine to wet. It just helps improve the chances that they won't bedwet that particular night. So some people even use it on an as-needed basis for a sleepover to help their odds, but you'd still probably want to have them wear a pull-up just in case, because they'd be more embarrassed if they had an accident. And then some kids have great success on that and begin to take it every single night because it's so successful. The other downside of it, however, is that it doesn't do anything to train them to wake before they urinate. So they're not teaching themselves to wake up to go to the bathroom. They're just not producing as much urine. So the other strategy for dealing with prolonged bedwetting is some sort of a training system. So there are various different potty pagers or star alarms. They're all different names and brands, and you can Google these and look some up. But they all basically work with the same principle, which is there's a moisture sensor strip that's placed in the child's underwear in the pull-up or nighttime pull-up, and once it gets moist, it sounds an alarm or a pager or a beeper or something to awaken the child. This can be tricky at first, and often all it does is wake the parents up, and the child, remember, they're a very deep sleeper, just sleeps through the alarm system. But for some children, if they're probably more likely if they're nearing growing out of it on their own anyway. For some children, it does work. So I've known some parents who would try it, complete failure, and then maybe a year later try it again, and then that time it worked. So they're perfectly safe to try, but just don't go into it thinking that it's guaranteed to work. Either the medicine, DDAVP, or the nighttime potty pager system or alarm system. So I hope this has been reassuring to you that your child is normal. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with their urinary tract. And of course, as always, mention this to your child's own specific pediatrician if you have further questions about this. Thanks.